Later, Mysteria speaks with Russell and informs him that Olsen told her that he'd like to help with tracking down the cult members. He confirms that he would like to. Master Daria mentions that he spoke just in time because she just received reports from their spies. She informs him that they discovered traces of the cult member who attacked the academy. He was seen somewhere in Sudra, a neutral city, and he's trying to run away all alone. Russell recalls that Sudra is a so-called paradise for criminals, which must be the reason he chose this place to run to. Master Daria mentions that tracking the offender down will be easier for him since he's confronted him before. She says the only issue is that the offender will probably be prepared to defend himself again. She asks him if he's still going to take the risk. Russell surprises her by saying that he will fulfill his duty as a guardian of the kingdom. The master seems pleased by his reply and informs him he'll depart the next morning. She tells him that she'll prepare a teleportation portal for him and reminds him not to forget his supplies. Our boy is glad she gave him permission, and he figures that he's taken the first step to stop Professor Hubert's death. The next morning, Russell travels to Sudra in a coach. Inside, he's surprised that they gave him 2 highest-grade potions, which he's never been able to use because they're pretty expensive. Russell guesses that the master is worried since he's their youngest disciple, even though she allowed this mission. While he's traveling, he sees a building that catches his eye, so he decides to stop by for a bit. It's the Louvre Museum, where his time travel began. He rushes to the room where he saw the dragon heart. He says to himself that all this time he's been wondering why such a miracle happened to him. His conclusion is that it was for him to grow more and protect even more people. Suddenly, a screen pops up with a mission to get the heart of the dragon folk with an unknown reward. Another notification shows him another mission called Dragonication, where he draws on the power of a dragon at his will, with rewards of 3 intermediate stones. Russell realizes that securing the heart of the dragon folk means he has to make a great contribution to warrant the granting of a commodity belonging to the royal family, which is pretty difficult, but not impossible. He checks the other mission and wonders what on earth Dragonication is. The system decides to explain it to him when it realizes he doesn't understand it. To explain it, the system triggers a strange burst of mana, and Russell's eyes become like those of a dragon. Russell recalls that he's felt this sensation before when he experienced a boost of magic at moments of crisis. He notices his reptilian eyes in the mirror and wonders if he's the one in the mirror. Later that day, he reasons that this power must have manifested during the fire trial, and it must be the reason he was able to survive it. He wishes he was able to control the sensation at will. He also considers the fact that he might be able to increase its potency by adding the overheat technique to Dragonication. If he manages to do that, it may be an extreme death blow that could come close to being a 6th circle. The only issue is that he doesn't know how to master it, since the power only manifests on its own when in danger. Pepper overhears him complain that he doesn't have time to train because of the mission, and realizes it won't even be possible to summon Dragonication with the usual training. Pepper gets an idea and tries to drag him away. He keeps sulking, and he tells himself no matter how much he focuses, he can't feel the same sense of crisis at will. Pepper notices he doesn't budge and gets angry. Suddenly Russell notices a stream of fire over his face. He quickly gets up and notices Pepper growling in dragon language. Russell laughs and asks him if he can help him out. Pepper smiles and growls affirmatively. Later, Russell sits attentively as Pepper sits on his head. He tries to cross over into the Mana world, just like Lady Ilo taught him. He soon appears there in his mind and remembers he was here with Ilo. The flow of time here is different compared to the normal world, and it might be the perfect place for magic training. The only issue is that he doesn't have a sparring partner. Suddenly, he looks back when something startles him. A huge, massive dragon appears, and it's clear that it is Pepper. Russell is shocked to see his true form, but Pepper just playfully nudges him. He thanks Pepper for helping him, but he says he's not comfortable fighting him. Russell notices that Pepper brought some other spirit beings for him to fight against, and he laughs that he was worried for nothing. One of the spirit beings looks like a man, and Russell smiles when he sees him. He cracks his knuckles and tells Pepper to do him a favor. Meanwhile, in a pub in Sudra, some of the spies report to their captain that pagans have left the city and ask if they should chase them. The captain orders them to get all hands on deck to pursue. The captain asks a man named Jackson to report to Mysteria that the situation has changed. Jackson affirms his orders and tells them all to be careful. The captain smiles and says that he doesn't have to worry. He informs him that he heard a divinity trained by Daria herself is coming to help. He adds that he can't let whoever it is come to take away his chance to play. Immediately after, he orders the men to follow him as they go out on the mission. 3 days later, at a hideout in Sudra, Jakon realizes that they need the Flame Tower divinity to get here quickly. He sends a report through a crystal orb and notifies them that the Flame Tower scouts are missing. Later that day, some guys notice something odd on the street. They're surprised to see a kid like Russell in a hardcore place like Sudra. Sudra is a neutral city where criminals usually come to escape the law. Russel realizes that it would have taken him a while to reach Sudra if it hadn't been for the teleportation gate in the royal city. Regardless, it still took him a week to get here with the gate, but thanks to the image training in the spirit realm, he was able to train well, and it was as if it took him months to get here. He remembers his fights in the spirit realm and how he was able to learn dragonication. After he does, the system notifies him that he has manifested the power of a dragon at will, and his dragon horns will manifest as per his current level. He's also told that during dragonification, his use of the flame attributes will increase greatly. Regardless, he realizes that there are still too many problems that need to be solved. He remembers fighting with the gruesome spirits in the realm, and how his dragonification stopped after a few seconds, allowing the monster to strike him to the ground. The first problem is that the power lasts just for 15 seconds. The second problem is the recoil of using it. Just like when using overheat, you become pretty defenseless immediately after using it. Meanwhile, while walking, Russel sees a big stick swing in front of him. A man stops him and asks if he's lost his way. The man smiles and tells Russel that he can show him the way if he wants. But our boy doesn't reply since it's clear the guy is trying to rob him. Russel grabs the stick from his hand and tells him it's such a coincidence that he ran into him, and all the men who surround him are confused. After being beaten to a pulp, the guy cheerfully takes Russel to a place called the Wyvern Tavern, like he has promised. The two beaten men bow in respect and say that they hope he had a comfortable trip. Russel laughs within himself that these guys are worthless idiots, so he tells them to leave. When Russel steps in, he spots Jackson, who's working as a bartender. When he sits, Jackson asks him what he would like, and our boy says he'd like a cocktail of a red drake mixed with a 12-year-old Briggs. One guy nearby laughs and calls Russel a lunatic because he's going to have a cocktail of drinks with over 70% alcohol. Russel realizes that he could die if he drinks something like that. But the order he made is a secret code of the Flame Tower. Jackson catches on and says within himself that he can't believe such a young boy is a divinity of the Flame Tower. As he serves him a drink, he wonders if he's not too young. Suddenly Russel is surrounded by a magic shield. Jackson tells him that it's soundproofing magic and the customers cannot hear their conversation. He introduces himself to Russel and informs him that he's a mage of the Red Tower dispatched here. He says he works undercover as the manager here at the Yellow Wyvern. Russel also introduces himself and suggests that they go somewhere else. When they step outside, Russel asks him about the scouts that went missing 3 days ago. Jackson affirms that this is true, and the last they heard of them was that the scouts were headed towards the desert ruins, tailing the sorcerer that attacked the boys. Russel asks if they fell into a trap, but Jackson says they aren't the type of men to act in a rush and fall for some trap. Russel asks him if he has the map for the path to the desert ruins, and Jackson wonders what he needs one for. Our boy says he needs to rescue them, but Jackson tells him that place isn't one where he can go alone. He says that the ruins where the scouts went missing are close to the Empire's borders and are quite dangerous. Russel reasons that Jackson doesn't seem to trust his capabilities, but Jackson suggests that he waits for extra reinforcement. Suddenly Russel activates his mana aura, and this shocks the man. Jackson recalls that he heard he reached 4th circle recently, but the energy he's giving off is at least 5th level magic. The worst part is how easily he's controlling it. Jackson coughs from the impact of the mana aura and confesses that it seems he was a bit hasty. He says he'll tell him the way to the ruins. Russel smiles when he realizes his approach worked. Meanwhile, somewhere else in Sudra, the sorcerer reports to some people higher up in the heretic sect and tells them that they left behind traces as per their order. The two concealed sorcerers commend his good work and say they can already smell the blood of those who would come to investigate. The next morning, Russel heads to the desert ruins. As he guzzles a bottle of water, he wishes he had known about the heat earlier so he could improve his ice magic. He pours some of the water on his head because the place is pretty hot. Eventually, he arrives at a building in the middle of the desert ruins where the men were last seen. Our boy notices that there are a lot of entrances into the building. He reasons that if his mission was only to find the cultists, he would have just nuked the ruins and forced them out. But since they might have the scouts captured in there, it's not an option, and he'd have to go inside. Russel reasons that they probably have traps inside the building. He decides to go in through a different route if that's the case. In a bid to enter through the most unexpected way to surprise them, he leaps onto the top of the building. He drops in through the roof and cushions his landing with some wind magic. After he lands, he's glad to notice there aren't booby traps coming for him. When he looks in front of him, he sees a large drawing of a man fighting alongside a dragon. The man that's standing next to the dragon seems to be a black-haired warrior. He looks to the end of the drawing to see the opponent, but realizes that part of the image has been torn out. While he's looking, he hears someone say it's a surprise to see him. He turns around and spots the sorcerer from before. The sorcerer comments that he can't believe it's the guy from the academy that's chasing him. With him, there is an army of enemies on both sides. The sorcerer says he's glad he walked in here on his own, so he won't have to go through the trouble of finding him again. The army is made of undead soldiers as usual. The man says that he'd grant Russell death as a show of his gratitude. Russell laughs and asks him if he hasn't been running a bit too far for a guy who talks so big. The sorcerer becomes angry and his eyes burn bright. He orders that he dies and the undead army launches forward at Russell. The sorcerer considers that these are the corpses of elite soldiers who died on the battlefield. This means they'll be much stronger than the ones Russell fought before. He grins and tells himself that this will be the boy's grave. Russell suddenly responds, and he creates a firewall around him like the last time. The sorcerer is shocked and asks if he's using the same magic again. Russell just laughs and says it's not the same one, but it's going to be different this time. Our boy recalls that draconification isn't the only thing he practiced during his time in the spirit realm. He relies on his training and starts to expand the magic firewall. After that, he decides to add a vector formula to make it mobile, and it becomes a fire wave. The undead army remains around, unable to cross the firewall. Suddenly the wall burns fiercer and grows. The fire reaches outside and envelopes the undead monsters. The fire burns them up and even covers up the entire room. The sorcerer watches in shock as the fire wave burns up his army, and he feels it shouldn't have been so easy. After the fire settles, Russell walks towards him and says that he can see him. The sorcerer is shocked that Russell can see him because he was using an invisibility cloak. He's shocked that Russell was able to use detection magic amidst those flames. He curses when he realizes he's in trouble and it's too late to run away. Russell runs towards him with a maniac grin on his face and announces that it's too late to run away. The impact of the attack is so strong that a massive explosion rips through the entire ruin. The man doesn't die. He collapses and starts to cough profusely. Blood starts to come out of his mouth, and he wonders if this is all he can do to put up a fight. Russell walks towards him and tells him to surrender now and save them both the trouble. The man says that he can't do that, and Russell wonders what he's talking about. The man staggers to his feet and says that his soul doesn't belong to him, and as if that wasn't enough, he sold his family too. The man screams out that he's given out everything that belongs to him. Suddenly, two people appear over the ruin and jump down through the hole while Russell isn't looking. The female, named Beth, uses a magic called demonic claw, and the man uses one called nightmare tail. They seem to be the people the sorcerer was reporting to. Russell quickly turns back and notices the monsters heading for him. They both land an attack on the spot where they're standing, and some dust and smoke cover the entire area. The smoke clears, and Beth laughs at the sorcerer, telling him he's looking good. The man says he understands that he's just the bait, but he finds it pathetic that such a young kid would rough him up this much. Beth scorns him by saying the look of a drying rat looks perfect on him. The already weak sorcerer informs them that Russell is the guy they're looking for. He tells them that he's the target, the disciple of the Flame Tower Master. The two cultists are shocked to hear that and become angry when they hear Daria's name. Meanwhile, Russell protects himself from the impact using a shield. He opens the shield and tells the attackers that filthy people like them better keep his master's name out of their mouths. Suddenly another screen pops up and gives him a mission to capture at least one of the three cultists, or kill them all. The cultists turn towards him, and the male one tells him he would have been much better off with a quick death. Beth agrees, as she laughs like a maniac. She calls Daria a B-word and says there's no way her disciple would die so easily. The woman announces that she'll kill him, make a marionette out of his body, and then make it dance in front of the flame tower. The male cultist orders the sorcerer, whom he calls Xavier, to quickly block the entrance, and he brings out his nightmare tails. Beth covers up the entrance with the bones of the dead soldiers. She activates her demonic claws and says this is getting fun. Russell notices these guys are using a full frontal attack and not calling on the dead while hiding in the shadows like the other sorcerers. He figures that they're nothing like the other opponents he's faced till now. Beth yells and asks if he's not going to come at them, because they will if he won't. Russell informs them he'd like to ask them one question. He asks what they did to the scouts who came before him. The male cultist asks him which scouts he's talking about. Beth becomes impatient and tells him to stop pulling petty tricks to stall for time. She launches the demon claw stingers at him and begins the fight. Russell jumps out of the way and wonders how these guys don't know about the scouts. Before he can land, the guy targets him with his whips using Nightmare Tail. The whips move pretty fast, but Russell manages to dodge them. He wonders if they don't really know or are pretending. He decides he'd have to find out for himself. Beth becomes angry that he's dodging and calls him the son of a bee. Suddenly, Russell cuts to the chase and generates his blaze lance. He easily deflects the demon claw using the lance, which shocks Xavier. The sorcerer behind them screams out that the spear he's holding is the same one that crushed the giant skeleton. Beth laughs loudly and says this is getting interesting. She raises her hands up and summons two large hands using her demon claw technique. The two hands clasp around each other, and Beth tries to merge them together to create a greater impact. She generates a spear of her own, called the Demon Claw Spear, and grins widely. She laughs and tells Russell to guess which one is sharper. Russell doesn't say anything, but he just stares at her. When Beth lunges forward to attack, the man tells her not to act on her own. But she doesn't listen. She rushes towards Russell and says it's too humiliating to be scared of a kid like him. Meanwhile, Russell prepares to attack her. As she lunges at him with her spear, he meets her with his blaze lance. Both weapons touch one another, and the demon claw spear shatters. Beth sees this, and her eyes widen with surprise. She looks beside her and sees that her arm is missing. Beth screams at the top of her voice when she realizes that her arm has been cut off. Suddenly, the man stretches out his whip and cuts off Beth's head, much to Russell's shock. He calls her a moron and says it's her fault since he had told her not to act alone. He faces Russell and calls him the disciple of the Flame Tower. He says he's his enemy, but he acknowledges his skill. Suddenly, his eyes begin to shine, and he creates a web around him with whips, releasing a mana breeze. Russell just watches him in confusion and waits for him to make his move. The man says that from this moment onwards, he'll tear him to pieces with all his might. Our boy notices the whirlwind of whips and jumps back to avoid being hit. The man tells Russell that it doesn't matter how amazing he is because he can't block attacks coming at him from all sides. A huge fire suddenly erupts from where Russell is standing. The guy notices something weird that catches his attention. Russell appears in front of him with a smirk on his face, and the guy is shocked when he realizes Russell used blink. Russell channels all his energy into one hand to use overheat. He lands the attack on the guy's stomach, moving quickly with his wizard body. The guy groans from the impact of the unexpected hit. Xavier witnesses the whole thing and is surprised. He notices Russell towering over the male cultist and wonders what is going on. When he realizes that he's a dead man now, he collapses when he sees they're losing again. He tells himself he won't end in a simple death, cursing the cultist for bragging earlier as if they were some big deal. Next to Beth, he sees a red object on the ground. He recognizes it as an artifact and gets an idea. Meanwhile, the male cultist shivers after getting his behind whooped. The battered guy tells Russell to stop playing around and kill him, but Russell orders him to shut up. He holds the guy's head and points a firebolt at him, demanding that he answer his question. He asks what happened to the scouts. The guy spits at Russell and asks him why he keeps asking about scouts. The cultist asks what on earth he's talking about. Russell is shocked that it seems the guy doesn't know. The guy spots an opening to strike Russell and considers that he doesn't have his guard up. He reaches for his dagger and tries to take his chance. Before he can reach it, a long whip extends across the room and grabs the guy by the throat. Russell is shocked and looks to his side to see what's going on. He sees Xavier performing another sacrifice spell with the artifact, morphing into a monster. Our boy is shocked that he has to face yet another sacrifice spell again. The cultist sees Xavier and wonders if what he's holding is the Hell Giant's heart. He's soon dragged across the room by the whip that came from Xavier. Meanwhile, Xavier keeps devoting the life and death of himself and others to complete the spell. As the cultist is dragged toward the forming Hell Giant monster, he tells himself he can't let himself get merged with this guy's monster. It's too late, as he's dragged into the monster and impaled in every part of his body. Xavier calls out the creature he calls the Abomination, and asks it to descend as the sacrifice is completed. Suddenly the giant mass forms into the creature referred to as the Abomination. The mana released from the creature is so strong that Russell begins to wonder what's wrong. A system notification pops up, telling him that the mission has been changed. It says all the cultists are dead, and he has to destroy the Abomination. The Abomination glares at Russell with red evil eyes. Xavier, now transformed into the beast, looks at himself and growls. He asks Russell how he dares to make him turn into such a mess. The monster uses a magic spell called Demon Claw Stinger, and tells Russell that he will make sure to rip him into pieces. Russell is shocked to see the Abomination, realizing it's using Beth's magic. The Abomination fires some demon claws at him, and he looks at them in dread. The explosion from the impact is so great that it brings down the whole building. Luckily, Russell creates a firewall around himself to protect from the imploding stones. He calls Xavier a bastard, realizing he barely made it out. The monster seems to have caused the entire building to collapse over his head, so Russell calls him a moron. He reasons that Xavier was unable to handle the power of such a monster, and dug his own grave. Suddenly, the rubble starts to shake, and it seems the monster is still alive. Russell notices the shaking and exclaims. The Abomination lunges out of the ground again, and it looks like it is hell-bent on destroying Russell. It releases his threefold chains and smashes them on the spot where Russell is standing, telling him to die. The Abomination threatens to chew him up until he's nothing but bones. Suddenly, the monster is hit by a fiery explosion on his back. Russell, who had thrown the blaze lance at it, watches to see if it landed. The monster is enveloped by smoke and everything is unclear. Finally, the monster, who is unscathed, turns around and spits on him. It declares that his attacks won't work on him. Russell grimaces and realizes that the monster is right because he has unbelievable defense. He realizes that he needs to think of a way out, but the monster quickly attacks him with its spiked chains. It tells him to think all he wants and smashes the chains on the spot he's standing. Russell quickly disappears from the place and tells himself that he needs to find a way to buy time. The monster mocks him and insists that he run away in despair in the face of his overwhelming power. Russell scoffs and says, as if he'll ever run from such a dimwit, he says to himself that this is just the beginning and quickly summons Pepper. When Pepper appears, he asks him if he can give him a hand, and Pepper excitedly agrees, as usual. Our boy creates some fire in his hand and decides to get started. He quickly erects a firewall between him and the monster. After he does that, he turns it into a fire wave and directs it at the abomination. The giant wave hits the monster, but it manages to block it, even though it inflicts some damage on it. The abomination calls Russell a fool and asks him if he really thinks such a magic spell could inflict damage on him. When the monster looks up, he doesn't see anyone in front of him and wonders where Russell went. Russell, who had hidden himself, smiles and tells Pepper to act now. While the abomination is still looking around, Pepper rushes towards him. The dragon fires a stream of fire at the unsuspecting monster. Pepper quickly runs circles around the monster and pours fire on it as it tries to catch him. Meanwhile, Russell flies above to land his final attack. Our boy is glad that he's been able to keep the monster's attention off him because he'll now be able to land his attack. He starts to generate the blaze lance but combines it with overheat because it's the only magic he knows that has overwhelming penetration power. When Pepper realizes that Russell is done creating the weapon, he steps out of the way. Meanwhile, the monster tells Russell to stop playing around and come out. Russell, who is jumping down at his head with the peculiar blaze lance, says he'll grant him his request. Shortly after, our boy lands the blaze lance on the monster's head with great power. The monster's head and body fill up with fire, but it informs Russell that all he's doing is useless. Russell tells him that he knows and laughs that he's yet to see his real deal. Suddenly, our boy summons lightning. He creates a large lightning sheet over the monster's head to attack it with. Suddenly, he summons the lightning to strike the top of the monster's head. The magic is something called a thunder giant's hammer. The bright lightning rips through the monster's entire system. The impact is so strong that the abomination explodes on the spot. A large smoke covers up the area, and it's hard to see anything. Finally, Russell lands on his feet and wonders if he has finally destroyed the monster. He looks closer and sees that the topmost part of the monster has exploded and revealed Xavier's skeleton. The system brings up a notification and informs him the mission is over and he will now receive his rewards. Russell is relieved to see that the mission has ended and collapses on his back. Pepper appears on his shoulder, and Russell commends him for doing a good job. Suddenly, the skull slips off the skeleton and falls to the ground. It bounces from where it falls and lands in front of Russell. Shocking him, the skeleton calls his name and mentions that Daria trained quite an amazing boy in her final years. The skull asks who would know that her prodigy would be a Raymond, and Russell is shocked that the skeleton is talking. The skeleton continues and says that he wonders if the son will be more interesting than the father. Our boy just remains shocked as he listens to the skull. Russell becomes angry and grabs the skull, demanding to know who's speaking, as it seems that someone else is speaking through the skull. The skull laughs and tells him he'll find out sooner or later. The skull also says he'll find out how his father looked in his last years as well. Suddenly it explodes in Russell's hands. The voice laughs and says that his father had quite a fierce look. Our boy begins to cry in the rain due to the frustration of learning that the enemies know his father. In the rain, he demands that the voice tell him who on earth he is, and he begins to curse. Pepper comes to his side to comfort him. The remnant of the abomination's body remains immobile in front of him. Meanwhile, someone watches Russell with a telescope and informs his fellows that their battle is over. The man orders his subordinates to send a report to the base. We switch to the 12th Desert, among the 2nd Battalion of the Imperial Army. Inside the base, the battalion commander, Viscount Montmart, reads the report from the men. He learns that the clash between the man assumed to be a mage of Endymion and a cultist resulted in the mage's victory. The report also says that judging from the magical force, the magician's level is also estimated to be over the 5th circle. The information surprises him, and he calls for the intelligence officer. Commander Viscount demands to know how it's possible for him not to realize that a mage of this caliber came this close to their territory. The intelligence officer apologizes and says that there were no reports of any unusual movements of high-ranking mages of Endymion. One other officer sitting nearby says it's possible that the person is a new mage. He adds that there's a rumor that the Flame Tower has a new youngest member. The intelligence officer tries to defend himself by saying that the mage must have just graduated from the academy, so there's no need to worry as long as they don't come close to the borders. The commander calls him a moron and tells him that that fresh graduate is estimated to be above 5th circle already. He says that means he could be a major force of Endymion in the future. Both men keep quiet, and the commander just sighs. The commander curses and says he doesn't want to have to deal with it. He says he has no choice but to call that maniac to deal with the threat, referring to an unknown person. Meanwhile, under the hot desert sun, Russell sits on a sandhill and chugs some water. He's in deep thought and keeps thinking about something. He wonders if the cultist really killed his father. Russel tells himself that he has to focus on the mission to find the scouts right now, especially now that he has people trailing him. He can't afford to lose focus. He looks to his side and figures the people must be scouts sent by the Empire. He notices they haven't attacked him, so he supposes that their objective is just surveillance. Suddenly he sees a strange figure far away on the desert ground. As he looks closer, the person starts to shine bright. Russel rushes towards the person with his wizard body to catch him. When he gets closer, the person completely disappears. He mysteriously sustains a cut to his cheek, and he falls to the ground. Russel gets up and wonders if all he has seen is a magical aura. A system notification comes up and tells him that he's encountered an enemy of a level he has never encountered before. His mission is to escape the clutches of the enemy unharmed with rewards of 5 intermediate-grade mana stones. Russel is shocked, and he looks at his attacker to know who he is. The guy appears to be a swordsman, and he recognizes him as someone named Spandam. Spandam just smiles at him and says he definitely aimed for his neck. The guy says that it seems that the report about a master above the level of the 5th circle was true. Russel frowns at him and recognizes him as the Empire's superhuman. He's the disciple of the great master swordsman, McGray. Spandam smiles like a maniac and tells Russel that it'll be fun slashing him. Russel says that in the end, the best way to describe Spandam is Spandam the homicidal maniac. The swordsman is surprised that Russel knows his name. He stretches out his sword at him and tells him that's a relief. Russel doesn't move and just frowns at him. Spandam says that since he knows his name, he'll be able to accept the time of utter pain he must endure. Our boy thinks about why Spandam is called homicidal maniac Spandam. Spandam's sword starts to shine with a crimson aura, and Russel remembers having seen it. Just because they bumped shoulders with him in his past life, he brutally cut down the whole group of mercenaries and killed them. Russel also almost died. If it had not been for Alan's intervention, they would have been cooked. In the flashback, Alan jumps into the scene just as Spandam is about to kill Russel. Spandam isn't scared and just smiles like the maniac that he is. The knight and mage clash in a fierce battle. Even at that time, Alan Page, who had crossed the wall of a mage, was barely able to subdue him and was injured. Russel tells himself that Spandam is an unprecedentedly powerful enemy. Spandam gets tired of waiting and he says it's time to get started. The knight uses a slash attack called Flying Blood. Russel quickly creates a shield to block it and creates 5 layers. The attack lands on the shield and smashes through it entirely. Russel is shocked that one attack is able to break through 5 layers of shield. He has no choice but to jump backward to avoid the line of attack. The Flying Blood lands on the spot he was standing and creates an explosion in the sand. Our boy wonders how Spandam's attack has this much power. Even after breaking through 5 layers of shield, he wonders how Alan Page was able to deal with someone like him. Spandam seems surprised that he was able to avoid the attack and notices he overlapped the shield. He comments that Russell's judgment is good, but the density of his magical power is too low. He lands another whirlwind of blood attacks. Russel hears what he said, and he figures out that's the solution. As the onslaught of flying blood comes at him, Russel generates his Blaze Lance since it packs a lot of power. He uses the Blaze Lance to cut through the incoming attack and dissipates it. Spandam is shocked by his response, and he wonders what's going on. He notices the Blaze Lance and tells Russel that it seems he was hiding something quite useful. Russel sarcastically asks if that is really so, and he throws the Blaze Lance at him. Spandam notices the lance coming at him, but he doesn't move away. Rather, he's surprised that the Blaze Lance remained intact even after Russel threw it. He quickly generates a Flying Blood Wave to block himself from the flying lance. The knight smiles and says that he really finds battles with mages quite interesting. Suddenly Russel uses Blink and appears behind him, with the Blaze Lance in his hand to strike him. He quickly launches the lance at Spandam's back to strike him from behind. Suddenly Spandam disappears, and it seems he also knows teleportation magic. He appears behind Russel and comments that Russel can also use Blink, like the rat that he is. Russel is shocked to see Spandam behind him when he turns around. The knight strikes Russel with his sword, and there's bloodshed. Spandam laughs and says it's been long since he's had this much fun. Before his sword can go through, Russel manages to teleport a few feet away from him. Our boy sustains a cut in his leg, and Spandam scornfully asks him if he's bleeding. Spandam keeps laughing, and he tells him he'll wait for him to heal himself. Russel tries to use some magic to heal the wound, and he realizes Spandam is using the aura around his body to enhance his speed, which is why it looked like he teleported. He reasons that Spandam's aura is not comparable to his wizard body. Meanwhile, he tries to cut through the clothing to stop the bleeding. Spandam keeps watching him and asks if all the people from the Flame Tower are this stubborn, or if they have to be that way to join their organization. Russel wonders why he asked the question and asks him what he means. Spandam grins and says the ones he encountered a few days ago didn't give up until the very end, referring to the scouts. He said they came to look for one of their scouts that was missing. Russel realizes he's the one who killed the scouts, and he's horrified. He asks Spandam again if he was the one who killed the missing scouts. Spandam just smiles and shrugs. Russel becomes angry and clasps his fist. He recalls that he planned to escape after a short confrontation, as the system told him, so he could go find the scouts. Instead, he activates and releases a great deal of mana, seeming ready to make a stand. He angrily reasons that this isn't a time to be thinking about the future. Spandam smiles and exclaims that Russel's been hiding his real power while fighting him. The knight grasps his sword and says they'll see if he can stay easygoing while his entire body is in pain from being torn to shreds.